for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson. I'm your co-host.
I am Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Well, Jack, we have got quite a few topics to discuss today. We got to talk about PFAS and, of all things, beef cattle. Plus, we got to talk some coronavirus stuff. We got to talk some Syria stuff. I've got a double Hammer Time Award this week, so we've got plenty of topics to discuss. Before we get started, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, or Reason.fm by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern, and you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. So be sure to listen to us on your local Pacifica station. Before we get started with today's show, I have a pretty big announcement that I want to make here. I'm kind of going through some health issues, and I feel that it's probably going to affect at least 2, maybe 3 episodes of the show later on this year, but I want to address it right now. Back in April 2020, I drove myself to the hospital. I had the worst pain I have ever had in my entire life. It felt like somebody was stabbing me in the stomach. Come to find out, I have gallbladder issues. I have sludge in the gallbladder, gallstones, you name it. They treated me at the emergency room, and they recommended that I get the gallbladder removed. I saw a surgeon a few weeks later. I didn't like the surgeon. Just nothing wrong with him. It was just a total lack of explanation. It was more clinical explanation than it was sitting down and talking in layman's terms. So I did not feel comfortable with that surgeon. And with COVID raging at the time, I was pretty hesitant about getting surgery. Well, nobody bothered to tell me then that the gallbladder issues would not go away on their own. Things would only get worse, which they have to some degree. The pain hasn't returned, but there have been other side effects from the gallbladder that I really don't want to describe on the air, especially if you're eating. So I went back to my doctor, and he referred me to another general surgeon, and this person I feel comfortable with. So in March, I am going to be getting my gallbladder removed. So that will affect at least one, maybe a couple of episodes of the show, because the surgery's happening on a Thursday, and I'm probably not going to be in any shape to record Friday. So there's that one. But there's an even more serious issue that has come up. About 3 years ago, I had a CT scan done. I basically had a blockage in my colon that turned out to be a polyp eventually. But before I could have my colonoscopy, I was having issues, so I had a CT scan done. They found what they call a lesion on one of my kidneys, and they recommended that I return in 3 months to have another CT scan done. I thought I did. 3 years later, I find out, no, we don't have a record of you having a CT scan done, and hell, at that time, my mom was having CT scans. I was having them, so I could have gotten her CT scan mixed up with mine. I don't know. So in November, I had a CT scan done in the same area to take a look at that lesion to see if it's grown or whatever. And it has. Not by much. It's only about 2 centimeters long. But in talking with one urologist, and I actually talked about it on last week's show, I had to fire the urologist that I was originally sent to because he started in with asking me why leftists who used to be pro-free speech are now against free speech. So I don't know why he decided. Well, I know why he decided to go there. He's a Trumper. So I ended up firing this guy. I went to a second urologist. I just saw him this week, and he told me that about 80 to 85% of the time, these lesions turn out to be kidney cancer. So with that looming over my head, I have also made a decision to have surgery in June to have the lesion removed. So that I will definitely be missing a couple of episodes because that surgery is falling on a Friday, and I'm going to be in the hospital for about 2 or 3 days. So I will keep you guys updated on what's happening health-wise. If you guys would, please send me some positive vibes. The gallbladder doesn't bother me, but the idea of possibly having kidney cancer scares the hell out of me.
Well, Darren, I can tell you as a friend, and I know I've seen many comments from friends concerning this. We're all very concerned. But at the same time, I think you're on top of it. It's early. It's, if it is cancerous, and that hasn't been confirmed, as you said, it's only a centimeter and a half, less than 2 centimeters, and this is definitely repairable. And I know we all wish you the best. You got a plan, you got it mapped out. You're courageously going forward, and I know it's gonna work for you, buddy.
I hope so. And of course, both these surgeries are going to bookend our listener appreciation party in May, which we still have to get details on that out to our listeners. That'll be coming in the next couple of weeks, so be sure to listen for details on that. We need something to celebrate, right? Good Lord. And you've kind of had your own health issues, and good Lord.
Well, yeah, it's been a season. The whole nation has had them personally or known somebody that's had health issues. And as we talk, we know how cold it is and frigid. But, spring is coming. There's better times ahead. Let's just trudge ahead, as they say. And it's going to be all right.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's get to our first story here. This is something that should be scaring the hell out of you in the state of Michigan, for that matter, all across the country. I've got this. This is Garrett Ellison writing for MLive. This is dated January 28th. I think this was originally published in the Ann Arbor News. This is out of Hartland, Michigan. Officials warn that beef from a southeast Michigan cattle farm contains unsafe levels of toxic PFAS chemicals traced to the application of wastewater biosolids as fertilizer on fields used to grow feed crops. On Friday, January 28th, the Michigan Health and Agriculture Departments issued a joint consumption advisory for beef from the Grostic Cattle Company, a century-old family farm near Hartland that sells directly to consumers and at farmers markets. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services believes that test samples indicated prolonged consumption of meat from the Grostic farm could pose a health risk, although the detected contaminant levels do not meet the U.S. Department of Agriculture internal criteria for issuing a product recall. We've talked about this issue on the show, probably a year or two ago, because the idiot neighbor across the street was spreading human waste on the fields that had PFAS and who knows what else. They didn't do that last year because my mom pretty much told everybody she could in the township that if our water got contaminated, she was going to file some multi-million-dollar lawsuits. So they stopped doing that right away.
Listen, the whole PFAS thing is completely under wraps and contained and suppressed. You have the corporate influence that wants to make sure, the political influence wants to make sure it's suppressed. And it reminds me in a lot of ways how with the environment, they're always cutting it in half. They go, well, our original estimation now has been reduced by half. The glacier out in the bay in Greenland that just broke free, which you haven't heard another word about it, cut all of their expectations for the 3 feet of ocean rise in half. So 30 years, it's down to 15 years. And the PFAS is so much more ubiquitous than they're letting on. We all have it in our blood. Every American, guaranteed, has it in their blood. A fact we never hear. How cancerous it is, how that presence of PFAS in your blood is guaranteed to come out as a cancer, there's no extrapolation. The amount of dumping around Michigan and West Michigan because of the DeFrost lid, I repeat, their suppression is greatly reduced. Mm-hmm. So this looks like it's severe, but the truth is it's just a drop in the bucket, and it's going to continue to the disclosures, very similar episodes and contamination, because how long did they buckle and fight the asbestos decades ago? Its severity, how common it was. Mm-hmm. It started out as a trickle. It took years before it turned out to every frigging school has it in the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly.
It took decades to get anywhere near the arms of America's understanding around the problem, and this PFAS problem is indicative of that.
Indeed, it is. Let me continue the story here. Roasts and steaks from the farm tested between 0.98 and 2.48 parts per billion for the individual compound PFAS, that's PFOS, because there's different kinds of it. That is according to officials with the Michigan PFAS Action Response Team, which goes by the acronym MPART. The samples were obtained in December, and lab results came back in January. There are currently no state or federal standards related to PFAS exposure in beef, although there have been high-profile examples of cattle contamination from PFAS in New Mexico and Maine. I never heard about that. Have you?
No, that's the point.
Yeah.
There's no cohesion. The enormity, the scope of this is all obfuscated.
Yep. The USDA did not immediately respond to an inquiry on Friday. The advisory is out of an abundance of caution, according to MPART. The situation is Michigan's first known example of PFAS contamination in beef. The farmer, Jason Grostic, is being offered financial assistance to offset the impact on the farm's business, and customer notification has begun, officials say.
Who's offering financial assistance?
You know, they don't say which agency is offering assistance.
As hell don't.
My guess would be the USDA. By the way, the officials say that the 300-acre farm features about 120 cows. So just imagine this. Let's say all 300 acres are farmland. There's no woods, there's no property, no barns, no whatever. The 300 acres of human waste containing PFAS being spread on 300 acres. And that PFAS, when those crops grow, the crops absorb the PFAS.
And that's just one of many.
And that's 300 acres that you can never farm again, ever, because it's going to have it. It's
no
permanent.
Idea of its permanence, of how comprehensive it is. They say it was developed in the Ohio Valley, on the Ohio River.
Oh, yeah.
By a chemical company, which is the spigot for the whole Midwest, the river, on the river, in the river.
Yeah.
The person that made the sitcom, or not sitcom, but the documentary about this, had parents that worked at the factory. That's why he was born with some sort of a deformity.
Yeah.
And so as he's narrating, he can barely speak, and he's saying this, you might as well have mailed out to every single person a PFAS sample to try at Christmas.
Yeah.
We are not getting the full picture. Nowhere near the full picture, and nobody's going to take the time or the political initiative to present an accurate full picture. And the cancers keep rolling, and nobody can really figure out why or where or how. This is how.
Yeah, and that was DuPont, wasn't it, that manufactured the PFAS?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to DuPont trying to get a pan that wouldn't stick, and they worked, the chemists, to develop this, and PFAS is integral right here in this state. How many decades did it proliferate? Not a single idea. People dying from cancer, and they never knew.
Yeah.
And they still barely know. There's not enough dots given so you can connect them.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised that this story has even made the light of day. Fox 17 reported on it locally here in Grand Rapids. I about fell over. Couldn't believe it. Channel 8 did too.
Get so developed, they know they have to.
Yeah. Let me continue here. Customers may have bought beef directly from the farm at the Hartland's Farmer Market or from a trailer in the rural King Store parking lot in Hartland. This should get your blood boiling, Jack. The Livingston County Educational Service Agency said Friday that 30 pounds of Grostic beef was used to make chili for preschool children on 3 separate days late last year.
And that's probably the tip of the iceberg.
So we're feeding this crap to our children. According to the agency, state officials, quote, have assured us that there is no risk to the children enrolled in either program as the frequency and amount of beef used in our lunch program are limited, end of quote.
There is threat. That's bullshit.
It is.
That's more containment.
It definitely is. Let's continue. The Grostic farm received biosolids sludges from 2010 to 2015 from the Wixom Municipal Wastewater Treatment Plant, according to MPART. In 2018, the plant was revealed to be a pass-through source of PFAS chemicals from a local auto supplier that were entering the Huron River. The chemicals were traced back to Tri-Bar Manufacturing, a chrome plater that makes automotive parts and sends its effluent to the Wixom sewage plant. The contaminants have become a recurring problem in the city of Ann Arbor's drinking water supply, which must filter its river-sourced water through activated carbon to remove them. A do-not-eat fish consumption advisory issued in 2018 remains in place for the Huron River downstream of the Wixom sewage plant discharge. The state began studying PFAS and wastewater biosolids in 2018 following the Wixom discovery. In 2021, Michigan began prohibiting land application of industrially impacted biosolids containing more than 150 parts per billion of PFAS and now requires testing of biosolids before they can be applied to farm fields where they're commonly used to add nutrients to soil. Let me just stop right there real quick, and I'll tell you the example that I see right across the street from me. That field doesn't grow crops worth crap anymore. It used to, not anymore. We have a older couple. They've been farming in this area forever. We rent our land out to them. They tried it one year, years ago, and saw that the yields were down, the crops didn't grow, so they stopped using it, and they've never used it since. This stuff is poison that you're putting on your fields. And the farmers are being sold this as free fertilizer because these wastewater treatment plants don't have any way of getting rid of the sludge other than incinerating it, and that's expensive and requires a bunch of permits from the EPA.
And it also gives off a residue that's toxic.
Absolutely.
In most of the facilities that they use to burn it.
Yep.
There is facilities, very expensive, that can just obliterate it without any residue, but that's not what they are using.
Yep. Groundwater monitoring turned up elevated PFAS levels at the Grostic farm last year. Environmental regulators said the farm's reliance on its own crops for cattle feed resulted in the chemicals bioaccumulating in the cattle. The farm received the largest and most frequent applications of contaminated biosolids from the Wixom plant. Again, sold to the farmers because it's free. You don't get to pay for the biosolids. But at what cost is free worth? Let me continue.
Well, the mafia was more sophisticated. They just hit it, put it in the road paving so that they pave roads with toxic chemicals.
Yep.
So while you're sitting waiting for the school bus ahead of you, you're breathing contaminants. That happened for decades and decades. The PFAS elimination, as gross as what you've just described, isn't limited to Wixom, to the Huron River down in Ann Arbor. It's ubiquitous across Michigan. It's up here in your farm and every farm in between. We have taken cancerous material and spread it evenly like peanut butter over the top of Michigan.
I've seen this stuff spread around the Newaygo area, around Cedar Springs, around Sand Lake.
Yeah.
When's it going to end?
It doesn't. That's the thing.
The end.
I know you didn't say that to be facetious. It doesn't end. I think it's 50,000 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Chemical doesn't wear out. You know what I mean? You can't put it in the field and hope it just kind of fades.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah. There's
your kids will face it head on.
And there's no removing the topsoil to get rid of it. No, it goes deep in the ground. Goes into the water. Abby Hendershot, director of MPART, a special team within the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy that investigates PFAS contamination around the state, said, quote, "We think this is a pretty unique situation. There are other fields that have impacts as well, but a farm where you're actually having a farmer grow his own crops to feed to his own cattle on biosolid fields, we think this is a unique farming situation that unfortunately was caught up in this." End of quote.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. Friday. Yeah. Oops being an understatement. Friday's advisory announcement was initially made by MPART, which posted a lengthy article online several hours prior to publication of the joint DHHS and Department of Agriculture and Rural Development advisory. According to the ATSDR, research involving humans suggests high exposure to PFAS may lead to increased cholesterol levels, changes in liver enzymes, decreased vaccine response in children, increased risk of high blood pressure or preeclampsia in pregnant women, decreases in infant birth weight, and increased risk of kidney or testicular cancer, which I'm looking at dead in the face.
Yep.
Grostic declined to comment when reached by phone Friday. He did say, quote, "I don't even know where to start. This was all landed in my lap less than 24 hours ago." End of quote. I feel bad for him. He was bamboozled by these companies. There's a company in Cedar Springs, Michigan that hauls this because it's just exactly what it is. It's human waste. And they hit these farmers. We can give you free sludge to put on your fields. It'll help make your crops grow. But they don't tell you it's going to poison the soil and the water underneath it.
Forever.
Yes. Stephanie Kammer, an environmental quality analyst with the division of Eagle that oversees sewage discharges, said that Grostic has been very cooperative. Quote, "It's a scary thing to have the state come in and do sampling. He allowed us access, was very, very cooperative. He allowed us to take soil samples, surface water samples, and install monitoring wells on his field. So it's been a very good relationship." End of quote. That's not a relationship I want to be in.
No.
God, it's like a bad marriage. God. Tony Spagnola, a Metro Detroit attorney and national PFAS activist, credited Grostic for his courage and decency in cooperating with Eagle and MPART. He said that many cattle farmers refused to cooperate with environmental and health regulators during Michigan's infamous 1970s PBB contamination disaster. Spagnola said, quote, "This guy just had more than the rug pulled out from underneath him. I hope that everybody will support him and his family in any and all ways that they can." End of quote.
I bet the guy's going to do just fine. What about the hundreds of people who at this very moment are the test tube for a growing cancer.
Yeah.
Really, why even worry about this guy's economic condition after you just heard that the history of farmers in Michigan after the PCPB, I think that's it, in the 70s, that was a dust retardant that was being put right in the milk, and because of it, every single woman had it in her breast milk, feeding it to her child for decades. Nobody knows the depth of corruption there.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about what those farmers experienced. I'm sure the dozens and dozens of farmers around in Washtenaw County that received this crap sludge are going to cooperate either.
Yeah.
And this is not isolated issues.
No, it isn't.
Remember, every American has PFAS in their blood. If you didn't get on the fields, you got it on the wrapper for your popcorn that you had Friday night watching the movie. It's ubiquitous. It's all over. We've been systemically, equally poisoned. Our egalitarianism in the United States today is we all get the same amount of cancerous toxin. Nobody misses it. It's not democracy. Forget democracy. Forget racial justice. Forget racial balance. Forget economic opportunity. The only egalitarian activity we get is we all get the same amount of cancerous exposure. Thank you very much, America.
Yep. I do want to mention that I reached out to Tony Spagnola to do an interview for this show and for a future episode of another show that I'm going to be producing for Pacifica Radio. I have not heard back from him yet. So if we do get an interview with him, we will post it directly on our Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple podcast. It'll be a separate podcast. So we'll stay on top of that. Michigan environmental activists reacted to the advisory by calling for the development of state and national regulatory standards for PFAS in soil and reiterated concerns with crops grown on fields that receive contaminated biosolids, calling it an under-recognized exposure pathway. Well, that's an understatement, too. How about this, folks? How about we set the limit at 0? 0. Stop using this. We talked about, there was a story by the Metro Detroit Times. This isn't new. Metro Detroit Times warned us several months ago, probably about a year and a half ago, about this, and said that the USDA and the EPA basically squashed scientists who said you can't use any of these biosolids as fertilizer for fields because it's all contaminated and you can't get rid of the contamination.
Zero tolerance.
But the chiefs at the EPA and the USDA said, nope, we're going to ignore science and we're just going to let the crap flow. Literally, let the crap flow.
Exactly what it is. Yeah.
This is what
ignore
happens.
Science.
This is what happens when you ignore science. This is what you get. You ignore science, you get the spread of COVID the way that it has been, and I am tired.
It's called zero tolerance. You see, we can go to fracking. Yeah, a few years ago, they had a documentary produced by a guy in Pennsylvania whose whole farm and river was contaminated because of fracking, and he made an excellent documentary. Now, fracking has pretty well dropped off of the complete screen, but its impact is still here. I went to a presentation of this documentary at a theater over on the Beltline. And everybody watched the movie, and the documentary indicated that our future was FKED. But get done, and you turn the lights on for a discussion, and WOMIAC, which is a DeVos environmental group, was presenting new ways to make the drilling pipes thicker walls to make it safe, and this could be done to ensure safety. And I go, wait a minute, hold it. Greenpeace says there's only one answer to fracking. Stop it. Zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. Is there not an environmental group in Grand Rapids? Because Kent County was already selling off land grants for fracking. Already while they sat in that theater. Yeah. It dawned on me in about 15 minutes of discussion, these guys are working for fracking under the guise of an environmental group. Which, if you do any research, you'll discover they get all their funding from guess who? DeVos.
Yep.
When you say deny science, well, hell, you can watch the now famous and highly rated document or movie called Don't Look Up.
Yep.
Remember the scientists that went out to try and check to see, and is this launch really going to dissolve this 10-mile wide hunk of rock up there? And the corporation said, hey, we got our own scientists, man. You know, like WOMAC. We can do this. EPA, it's all established today with ex-corporate oil officials. So in the movie, they turn away the scientists. Yeah. And a week later, Earth is completely destroyed because of the fact that they're denying science for corporate reasons, but they do it in such a way they make it look like it's science itself.
Just like the CDC lowering the quarantine standards if you get COVID from 10 days down to 5 because we can't shut business down. We need to shut business down.
Yeah.
We need to shut this whole goddamn country down for 2 weeks.
That's why fracking never had a chance. It's $1 billion industry. There was no way it was going to be. If a candidate said, I am going to be elected, and instead of pardoning all of the criminals that killed policemen on January the 6th and are stomping down democracy, and instead of letting them all free, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop all production of tobacco in the United States. And within 2 years, I guarantee you, I will save X amount of millions of lives. Now, there's a concrete promise that would save lives. Yep. I wouldn't get 50 votes.
Yep.
The corporations would make sure he wouldn't get 50 votes. There was a professor at Ferris who went online and said, here's the history of the United States. You ready? We took a plant that the Indians had here called tobacco. We globalized it. We guaranteed that from the inception of this country, we would be responsible for the deaths of millions and millions of people. My mother died of lung cancer. It's rough. It's ugly. It's gruesome. And we gave that to the world so we could build this economic turban here called the United States of America on the tissue of human lungs globally. That's what a United States. Now, this guy, they call crazy. This professor. No, he's nuts. He's out of his mind. He's crazy.
Is this the one that they've suspended?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. he pointed out that we started out murderously capitalistic. Then we brought people that had a dark skin to work that tobacco in the tobacco fields. We're on our way.
I got to ask you this question. What came first, the capitalism or the murdering?
What came first was religion.
Yeah, that's true.
Seriously. Religion is the headwater for capitalism. I'm not exaggerating.
It certainly is.
Yeah. Calvinism, which is religion, Calvinism, which is a derivative of religious doctrine, is the headwaters for capitalism. You can take it, you can bank on it, you can study it, and I'm telling you the truth.
Yep, definitely. Well, I tell you what, I want to get, I didn't mention this to you. I talked about this last week. I might as well hit the music. Little bit of Neil Young, right?
Oh, yeah, my hero.
Yeah. So we have an update on what's happening over at Spotify, which is the stock's tanking a little bit, or it was. So in solidarity with Neil Young include Joni Mitchell, Nils Lofgren, Crosby, Stills, and Young, or Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I should say, have all removed their music, and now here's going to be the big one. David Crosby got on Twitter yesterday and said, I need somebody in my friends that knows Taylor Swift to have her get a hold of me. I need to very badly talk to her. You know what's going to happen there?
I sure do.
If Taylor Swift yanks her music off Spotify, you can kiss Spotify bye-bye.
Yeah, well, who was the long-time artist that's as old as Neil Young, the woman? I want to say Carole King, but it wasn't Carole King.
Joni Mitchell?
Joni Mitchell. Yeah, this Rogan, I love to see not Diamond, but Young take him down.
Yeah.
What a fraud.
Yeah.
But, pretends he's a journalist because he brings in, quote, quote, controversial voices. And that's code for dumbasses.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Joe admitted on air, quote, "I'm a fucking idiot." End of quote. That's a direct quote.
Yeah, it's true.
Well,
That's not journalism.
He is an idiot. A fucking idiot. And everybody's screaming, "Oh, Neil Young, he doesn't like free speech." It sounds like the urologist that I fired a couple of weeks ago. Why is it that the leftists who used to be pro-free speech are all of a sudden against it when it comes to masks and vaccine mandates? You know what we're pro? We're pro-living. We're not spreading disease among people. We're caring about people. I'm at the point, I am so sick of this. One of these days, we need to record a separate episode to cover for one of my surgeries, and I want the topic to be the First Amendment. The whole hour. Little bit educating everybody on what the First Amendment is, what it does, what it covers, and what it doesn't.
Well, I think that, I'm still suffering some of the ravages of COVID myself, personally.
Yeah.
I think that the nation is living proof that you can stick the truth right up their nose, the truth of the contagion, the death rate, the numbers, the scientific proof, the evidence, the proof of vaccination covering and making it less deadly if you have got 3 vaccinations. And it means nothing, absolutely nothing to the black solid segment. You can call them red hats, you can call them rednecks. We know who we're talking about. And
the maggots. Because
you cannot put water in their face and explain that's called wet. And they totally miss it, right?
Yeah.
They totally miss it. What else can you do? Like we were talking about this movie out about John Brown.
Yeah.
John Brown's answer was kill the slaveholders.
Yeah.
Right?
Zero tolerance.
Kill the Confederate pinheads who think the election was a lie, right? Kill them. That's not me espousing that. That was John Brown's axiom because you can't convince them otherwise. And their stupidity now, it's killed over 1 million people.
Not only his axiom, it was his actions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He rode into the plantations and beheaded the people.
Yeah.
The Confederate owners.
Zero tolerance. I think that's going to be the theme of this week's show, is zero tolerance.
Yeah. John Brown showed us the way. No, I say that not contemporarily speaking. I say that because it was less than a year later we went to Civil War, and they say he was the catalyst for that. It got to the point where it's too egregious. We're not going to convince these people. They hate human beings to the degree that they make them into machines. They break their families up. They rape their mothers, and you can't reason with them. Mm-hmm. You can't talk with them. Go to war with them.
Yep.
That's zero tolerance.
Yep. Hey, real quickly, since we've been talking about COVID, I want to get to this story real quickly. This is Annalise Knudsen writing for Staten Island Live out of New York City. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is warning people to stop using a certain brand of rapid coronavirus test because they could give false results. The FDA says to stop using it. Folks, if you need to get a pen, write this down. The FDA says to stop using the Empowered Diagnostics CovClear COVID-19 Rapid Antigen Test and the ImmunoPass COVID-19 Neutralizing Antibody Rapid Tests. These tests were distributed with labeling that indicates they are authorized by the FDA, but the FDA says neither test has been authorized, cleared, or approved by the agency for distribution or use in the United States. So if you get them, you are asked to not use them, throw them away. I don't even know how you would throw them away at this point, because now they're talking about safe ways of getting rid of your test once you use them so that you're not polluting the environment or spreading COVID-19. So yeah, just make
Did you receive your 4 free tests, Darren?
Not yet. I've ordered them. They have not showed up in the mail yet. Have you?
Sharon got 4.
Okay.
Came in the mail yesterday, yeah.
Awesome. How long
But
did
the
it
thing
take?
is, not that long. Maybe less than 2 weeks. The thing is, I'm just curious, who produced those? When you go through that list, I'm sure none of the ones that are being mailed out were unapproved by the FDA, that I can be sure of.
Yeah. By the way, we should mention for our local listeners here in the Grand Rapids area, all Meijer stores are now giving away a free COVID at-home antigen test.
A quick test.
Yeah. So
You don't have to turn it in. Yeah.
And also, all Meijer stores are handing out free N95 masks. Not the KNs, the full-blown N95s, the NIOSH approved N95s. You can pick
Darren, how long have we been battling COVID? This is February the 3rd, 4th, or whatever the hell it is?
Today, we're recording on Friday, February 4th, 2022. This has been almost 2 years now.
And today we can get free N95 effective masks
Yes.
and tests.
Yes.
The Braves cry out for where the hell were they last month, or 2 months, or 3, 5, 8, 12 months ago? Where were they?
Where were they 2 years ago? You know, the big problem with this country is we don't plan ahead. We stopped planning ahead in the 1980s with, guess who? Ronald Reagan. Supply side economics, Reaganomics, supply side. No, supply side economics is what's killing this country as it is.
Yep.
We don't produce enough. We don't stockpile enough. We just say supply side. Oh, we'll just let the supply side take over. Well, we've seen how it works. Hundreds of thousands of Americans dead from a disease that could have been prevented by wearing a mask. We've been working on a vaccine for decades because they knew this was coming. They got it turned around, but now there's people, I don't trust a vaccine that's been developed so quickly. Well, it wasn't developed quickly. The truth is, it took years. And people don't believe this.
All these 4 free tests that are going out, they could have been going out months ago.
Yeah.
Months ago. How many lives would have been saved?
The post office had a proposal in 2020 to send masks to everybody. And you know who put a stop to that? Donald J. Trump. Period. End of story.
Donald J. Trump said verbatim, if we have more tests, we'll find out more people have it. We don't want that. I'm not making it up. He said that word for word.
Yeah, he did. He certainly did. This is what happens. Folks, I'm going to tell you, rich people don't care about you. Evil, violent, conservative savages do not care about you. There's a guy I won't mention the address, but it's pretty close by to me, and he's got one of those blacked out American flags. I tell you what, come for me, buddy. You'll find out. You'll f*** around, and you will find out. I guarantee it.
Oh. You know what John Brown would do?
Yep.
we're down. You know, they said to John, they go, listen, this is extreme when you take a double-edged sword and behead plantation owners. He goes, wait a second. What if somebody came and took your sister, your daughter, raped her, took human beings and made them into machines until they died of malnutrition?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah.
What would you do if somebody did that to your daughter?
Yeah. You know, Jack, I just thought about this. Isn't John Brown the past living, breathing example of Popper's paradox of tolerance?
Yep.
Really, when you think about it. He is. Oh, God. Hey, Jack, I know you wanted to talk about Syria real quick. Let's kind of move into that topic a little bit. I've followed it a little bit, but not really to the degree you have.
Well, it's relatively fresh, and so I don't have a lot of detail either, but I can say one thing unequivocally. The cover-up for the amount of civilians and children that were killed, the Pentagon got a rash on its fanny because the journalists were asking, I think this is a direct quote, probing questions and wouldn't settle on the answers that the Pentagon was giving. 13 civilians, and then that grew, and 8 kids, and the Pentagon initially said that the guy himself detonated an explosive that killed all of these kids, these family members. But then there was a recount in my own mind of times when the civilian hit lists were greatly reduced, and I go back to the Blackwater days. It took months before the number just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And father said, I was driving my son to school, and he was shot in the back seat of the car. His voice that was completely squashed, that came out. But initially, it's a successful invasion, and the head of ISIS, they probably already have a new head already. Mm-hmm. And they talk about things like this greatly reduce the effectiveness of ISIS. I heard about how greatly reduced the effectiveness of the Taliban was, but it kicked our ass in Afghanistan and flew us out, right? And is now having its way, back to its barbarous way. So I'm not going to say ISIS was defeated today, but I know there'll be carcasses drug out and counted, and then a false impression of what really happened and how it went down. So that's Syria in a nutshell. We will not see a reduction. Oh, and another point that's interesting is that they were able to communicate with the Russian army, say, hey, listen, we're going to be doing this and this and this. It's a military operation. It will involve these many men. Stay away from it.
Yeah.
Don't. Now, is that the same Russia that's got 150,000 troops around the pinnacle of war? We could sit down and have them give us our little murderous campaign without any I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's new today. Today was the attack on this ISIS leader. We're seeing China embrace Putin, and we're seeing BRICS. The West is being turned against by this unification of the East, and we're in big, deep trouble, and we're on the brink of war, and we're sending troops to the NATO nations. But we're also behind the scenes working with the Russian army, making sure that they know what we're doing and they don't interfere. It's incredible. And they believe we're going to swallow this without even gagging.
Yeah, because we have in the past, Got
away with it over and over and over and over.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Something we're not swallowing is our next topic, and we need to play the appropriate music.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh, yeah, it is hammer time. It's time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. We've got 2 winners this week, so anytime we get 2 winners, Wade Garrett has to chime in.
Double douche. Who is that guy?
Gentlemen,
Wade Garrett. Holy shit.
exactly right.
And we don't have to look too far, just in our backyard for this week's winners. And it's all in the same story, nicely wrapped up tight as as a cheap man's wallet, right? Oh, boy. So winner number 1 this week is Allendale Township Planning Commission member and Republican gubernatorial candidate. Now, I'll just call him what he is. He's a cuckoo, nut job. Ryan Kelly,
Yep.
Winner number 1. Winner number 2 is another cuckoo. He is State Senate candidate Mike Detmer. I have this story. This is Jacqueline Francis writing for Wood Television. This is dated January 31st out of Olive Township. Listen to this, folks. The Ottawa County Clerk is responding to a live stream posted by Republican candidate for Governor Ryan Kelly that appears to show him telling prospective poll workers to tamper with voting machines. Kelly said in the video posted to his Facebook page over the weekend, quote, "If you see something you don't like happening with the machines, if you see something going on, unplug it from the wall. Take control of the narrative." End of quote. Kelly, who is a member of the Allendale Township Planning Commission, doubled down on his comments during a phone call with News 8 Monday. Quote, "My message was if individuals working the election expect fraud, that they repair the injury. I stand by that 100%. The left is mad that we are taking control of the narrative and we will not let them steal another election." End of quote. No, the left is pissed off because you're trying to rig a goddamn election, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, this guy's hardcore dumbass, isn't he?
He is. John Brown, baby. It's
our
time.
Zero tolerance for these idiots. They're deadly. They're stupid. They're killing your democracy. They're killing your kids.
Let me add this here. Kelly, who is no stranger to controversy, was seen participating in the January 6th traitorous insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Let me repeat, traitorous storming of the United States Capitol. He is a traitor, my opinion.
Yeah, well, your opinion's right on that.
His latest comments during a campaign event in Brighton on Saturday quickly caught the attention of election officials on both sides of the aisle. Republican Ottawa County Clerk Justin Roebuck said Kelly's misinterpretation of election laws are concerning and potentially harmful to our democracy. Gee, you think? Roebuck said, quote, "This statute essentially gives the election inspectors the authority to inspect the voting equipment to determine whether or not it's been tampered with by a voter or anyone else who is in the precinct. But at no point is it ever lawful for one election inspector to essentially shut down the process of voting if they suspect something." End of quote. Roebuck said if an election worker suspects fraud, they're trained to follow a proper chain of command to investigate the situation. Roebuck added, quote, "It's really important for people to remember that there is a process in place and we follow the rule of law." End of quote. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel posted tweets in response to Kelly's remarks, writing that it is illegal to tamper with election machines and anyone who does so will be prosecuted, and rightfully so. And I tell you what, Attorney General Nessel, drop the jail on him for 20 years.
Yeah.
I'd rather it was 200 years. This will stop that. Put somebody in jail for 200 and that'll stop a lot of shit. Unbelievable.
Yeah, you know, we got a president that said, "Hey, give me 17,000 votes in Georgia, one more. That's all we need." What else do you need?
Yep.
Unplug the machine. Against the law.
Yeah. Unplug their brains are already unplugged, so yeah.
I mean, when the guy said unplug the voting machine,
yeah,
that is against the already expressed law.
Yeah.
What contemplation do we have to think of for prosecution?
Yeah. Let me finish this up here. The top Democratic officials also warned against voter intimidation after Republican State Senate candidate Mike Detmer, who was also a cuckoo, appears in the same video as Kelly, telling supporters to, quote, "be prepared to lock and load," end of quote, in response to possible election fraud. In the video, Detmer said, quote, "So, you asked what we can do? Show up armed. If not, the poll workers," and then you can't hear what he says, and he ends his paragraph by saying, "make sure that justice prevails," end of quote. Let me once again add, it is illegal in the state of Michigan to show up to the polls carrying a gun. You will go to jail immediately. It's called voter intimidation. And if you do it, you should go to jail. It's
called the repudiation and eradication of democracy. What they're doing is saying, we don't want a system where a majority of voters will decide any outcome. We know what's right. And there have been political theorists, as conservatives, throughout history who said, do not rely upon the majority decision. You can't trust the majority decision. You don't know how sophisticated, unsophisticated they are. You have to have the clerics, people like ourselves, make those decisions.
Yes.
You see, we think that when you say democratic to a conservative, that means something to them. That doesn't mean anything to them. They don't put any stock in that.
No,
it means nothing to them.
they hear the word democracy and they think Democrat.
Yeah, they also think of a process that's ass backwards. They don't think it's benevolent. They didn't read the Greek history of the Colosseums, where they would bring a couple thousand people in every day and bring issues. Should we get bigger wheels on our what do you call our
Chariots?
Gladiators? Chariots, yeah. Should we charge more money for school lunches? And then everybody would vote.
Yeah.
Just citizens would vote, and that decided the policy.
Yeah.
And and when they had an empty seat, that was called an idiot, which meant idiot. That the word idiot comes from the fact that people didn't come in that day to make decisions that affected their own life. They don't want the Americans making decisions that affect their life. That's a corporate boardroom someplace that will give the politician his power and his glory if you give that boardroom what it wants. That's democracy to these people. So you can't expect them to embrace the concept democracy. It doesn't mean anything to them. I was taught a liberal arts education and learned about the beginnings of democracy. It started in Greece. It was a beautiful thing. It was an ideal. Today, the World Council on Thriving Democracies say it's never been on the lower ebb. The authoritarian governments are eating up democracies around the world.
Yep.
There's never been fewer active democracies. And what few there are, United States is about the middle of the pack. Doesn't lead the way.
No.
And it's dying fast, folks. They're killing it in front of our eyes.
They absolutely are. And these two, Ryan Kelly and Mike Detmer, are two of the accomplices that have the knife to the throat of democracy. They really do. So to Ryan Kelly and Mike Detmer, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
That's right. Hey, Ryan, I tell you what, I'll do what Joe Elder recommended. I'll meet you in a boxing ring in the middle of the town square. We'll see who wins, buddy. I challenge you to a boxing match. These people, I swear to God. Hey, I might not be able to whip cream, but I could whip Ryan Kelly's ass. Easily.
Oh, wow.
What
a douchebag.
Yeah.
He's the hands-down winner, I'll tell you.
Yep, they sure
This
are.
is the guy who wanted a Confederate statue standing over an African-American baby.
Yep.
He's proud of it. And he wanted to keep it and retain it.
Yep.
So, congratulations, man. And don't forget, tolerance. The day is coming.
Yep, zero tolerance. Again, that's going to be the theme of today's show. And speaking of, Jack, we are out of time for this week, so we'll hopefully be back next week if the heat's working at your place.
If the creek don't freeze, right?
Yeah. How high is the water, Mama? It's 3 feet high and rising. Folks, I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Jack Prince.
For Katy Steele, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.